I'm the co-founder of Challengermode, which is an esports and technology company, and we're building esports infrastructure. And today I'm going to be talk about one of our latest projects, the National Esports Leagues. But first, I will briefly discuss the background of our company to give you all a little bit of context about why we're doing what we're doing. I assume that most of you are already very well acquainted with esports and the explosive growth that the industry is seeing. But to provide the right context, I'll just go over some of the typical numbers that you've seen probably many times before. League of Legends, one of the world's largest computer games, still had more viewers than the NBA during last year's the League of Legends World Championship. Twitch has more daily viewers than the ESPN. There are more gamers in the world than there are sports participants. And 60% of people who watch esports also play that esports game, compared to 10% in a sport like football. And there are hundreds of millions of hardcore gamers or esports participants, but only a few thousand professional gamers. And it's said that esports is going to fully debut in the Olympic Games in 2024. So esports truly is becoming the world's biggest sport. But in a world where there are only a few thousand professional players and hundreds of millions of serious participants, we see that as a sign of a really big gap and a deeply rooted gap or inaccessibility in the market, which is why it's our mission to make esports as accessible as regular sports to regular players and people. Because just like in regular sports, the right tools and the right infrastructure is needed to make it accessible to a wider audience. So this means tournaments and leagues and competitions at every skill level. It means the tools and the infrastructure that allows gamers to connect and build their teams and build communities, and a way for regular gamers to take their passion to the next level. In a slightly tongue-in-cheek fashion, we've devised a master plan to solve this problem, and it involves 3 steps. The first step is to create automated and scalable esports infrastructure, that is digital infrastructure and digital technology. And this lays the foundation. The next step is to make this widely available and accessible to the ecosystem of stakeholders within esports. And finally, the third step is to offer reliable win-win monetization options on top of this ecosystem for all of the stakeholders in the ecosystem, meaning game developers, gamers, publishers, esports organizers, influencers, and so on. And of course, Challengermode is the product of this plan, or the implementation of this plan. Challengermode is a platform available across multiple devices that allows gamers to compete and socialize, and for anyone to organize esports competitions. It's fully automated and integrated with some of the biggest games in the world. And game developers, organizers, and other stakeholders in the ecosystem, like brands, also use this platform to create and scale up esports competitions. Challengermode is the exclusive and official tournament platform for DreamHack, the largest gaming festival and also one of the largest esports organizers in the world. We have hosted about 66% of the PGI qualifiers, that is the World Championship for Babji earlier this year. And we've done tens of thousands of tournaments on the platform over the past 2 years. Right now, we're a team based in Stockholm, in Sweden. We have about 25 people in the company with backgrounds from Twitch, ESL, Spotify, Google, Microsoft. So we have a mix of both tech and business/esports people. So with that out of the way, I've come to the meat of the talk, which is about the National Esports Leagues. And the National Esports Leagues is an initiative that is meant to it's what we believe, one of the most ambitious initiatives within esports. And it's an initiative meant to use the technology that we've built, to use the platform, and build and actually solve the problems that I was talking about earlier, which is a permanent and sports-like national league framework for esports. And the goal is to set the standard specifically for grassroots esports and to bridge the gap between regular gaming, matchmaking, and so on and so forth, and the pro leagues, because that's where we see the biggest gap. And it's more than just one league. It is a framework of leagues. In fact, it is a system of esports leagues that are run and automated and scalable on top of the Challengermode platform, and then deployed in countries all across Europe to begin with, and globally in the future. And the point is that players of any skill level are able to join these leagues and compete and perhaps reach the very top in the games that they enjoy. And again, the purpose is to provide a path to the top for those who are willing and able, to provide a professional-like competitions for people who are not at the very top yet, or who are not professionals, and to facilitate the growth of amateur esports in general. Every particular league is, again, sports-like in the sense that there is a structure of several divisions with the pro or elite division at the top, and then divisions below that that can accommodate any number of teams. So the leagues are completely scalable, and this is, again, a result of the digital platform, the Challengermode platform. So every country gets one of these leagues, or every region. Every league has a seasonal format, just like you would expect, with the take maybe 1 to 3 months to play, and then at the end of every season there is a playoff for the top division and a qualifier for all of the other divisions below. There are 2 times as many groups in every division as you go down, so that means 1 group at the very top, and then 2 and 4 and 8 and so on, and that scales up as far as it needs to. And it also means that wherever you happen to play in the tree of divisions, you will find people of similar skill levels, which means that the system becomes sustainable over a long period of time. And then, as is typical in many other sports leagues or leagues, the top 2 teams in every group qualify up to the division above, and the bottom 2 teams are relegated to the division below, or they play some sort of interseason qualifiers. And the next step is to take the best teams from every league and pit them together into regional championships or even pan-European championships. And this is an example of this is what we're doing now in Scandinavia, in the Nordic countries here, where the best 2 teams from Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland compete in the Nordic Championship, which is a DreamHack competition. And so that's how we're bringing them together. And this is for Counter-Strike and League of Legends. And here in the Baltics, just yesterday, we had the Baltic Esports League CSGO final, which is the Baltic version of the national esports leagues. It's organized by GameOn, and this is also a big part of the National Esports League project, where we reach out, Challengermode reaches out to local organizers or broadcasters that are tasked with organizing and marketing and selling and nurturing the league at their level. Because of course, we as one small company, as a tech company, are unable to launch and scale up or really nurture leagues in every country all over the world in dozens or even more different computer games. So we have to work with local partners who know the local markets and who can make the most out of the leagues. And that's exactly what we're doing with GameOn here. So we have done the League of Legends Baltic Esports League just this summer, the first season, and now we just wrapped up the Counter-Strike Season 1 Baltic Esports League, and then next year we're doing PUBG as well as the following seasons, and probably some other games as well. So you can see this as almost like a licensing model where we're taking the platform, Challengermode, we're providing it to organizers all over Europe and eventually all over the world who want to either bring in existing national or regional esports leagues or create esports leagues, and then they fall under this umbrella that we call the national esports leagues. Maybe one question that has popped up is, what about existing esports, professional esports in different games? So in League of Legends, you have the LCS. In Counter-Strike, you have all of the majors. And PUBG recently announced their pro leagues. How is the NEL not competing against these leagues? And the answer to that is that for those established esports titles that already have a structure in place for the esports around their games, we are working as much as possible with the game developers. So the BEL, the Baltic Esports League, is actually in League of Legends called the European Regional League. So Riot Games has outsourced to third parties all over Europe the ERL. And these are then regional leagues placed in different regions in Europe. And the best teams from these regional leagues qualify into the EU Masters, which is then tied directly to the EU LCS and the League of Legends Championship Series. With the Nordic Championship for Counter-Strike and also for League of Legends, it's the same thing there. It's tied into the professional ecosystem in those games. So we're trying to not create a new structure alongside the already established competitive infrastructure in those established games, but actually feed players and teams into them. And this is, again, an example of connecting the grassroots with the pro level and trying to bridge that gap as best as we can. But I think the really exciting opportunity is the future esports games and the future game titles and the next generation of esports titles. And I think it's there that Challengermode and all of the organizers and people like GameOn can have the biggest impact, because then what we have is an organized structure of all of these national leagues or regional leagues, perhaps all over the world, that new games can tap into, both in the sense of there being funding and marketing and broadcasting options and organizational options that they can put their game into, but also in the sense that we have this scalable esports digital infrastructure that they can use to nurture local or national talent within their games. And again, because there is this scalable structure with several divisions, even players who don't perhaps themselves want to become the very best in a particular game, they can still find their place in the league structure and play just like you would expect to play in a regular sort of after-hours sports league, where you play 1 or 2 games per week with your friends or with your coworkers. And the level of competition will just depend on where you are in that hierarchy. And you then have the possibility to go all the way to the top if that's what you actually want. And so with that, I don't have much more to tell you about the National Esports Leagues project. I'm here to talk to esports organizers and to game developers who might be interested in including their game into this framework. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that any of you might have about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. We have time for a couple of questions there on the left.
Hello. I wanted to ask, there are many teams currently that are completely multicultural. They can even have players from various different continents. How would you place them in a national league?
Yeah, that's a good question. The basic rule is that players have to have 50% or more of their players from the region or the country that the league is in. That's like the short answer. And in practice, we've seen that it works for most cases. There are always exceptions, of course. I think the longer answer is that currently, you're right, that a lot of teams have their teammates spread out in multiple places, at least over a continent. But I think long-term, the point is exactly to create this springboard and this structure where local teams can start to build up and have a place to compete in. So I think it's definitely going to be a bit of a challenge in the beginning, but over the course of the next coming years, with these leagues in place, that's going to incentivize people to start to play on a more local level and to build up local teams that are also playing at a very high level.
Thank you. And another question.
Yeah.
Then how would you go about creating a ranking system for a game like PUBG, where it's so, I guess, random to actually do who actually wins, where the engagement can happen at any time? How would you go about ranking such a game that basically didn't even exist before?
Yeah. Well, so we have a ranking system in place on Challengermode, and we've adapted that to PUBG as well. But within this particular league system, so instead of all of the teams in a group playing each other, over the course of 2 months, for example, which is what you would have if there are maybe 14 teams or so, and then you'd have to play 2 teams, once per week, and then it takes a couple of weeks to have gone through the whole group. In PUBG, you play everybody in your group every game, right? So there's like a diminishing return after a while. But essentially, you get the same thing. So instead of having teams moving up and down through the divisions every 2 months, they usually play just 1 or 2 weeks in like a mini season. And then the relative skill levels will get cemented over time as the best teams rise to the top, and the less good teams kind of fall down or find their place in the structure. So I think the end result is the same. It's just adapted for the Battle Royale format.
Thank you for your question. Oh.
Hello. I have a question, like, if you have a friends and like you want to go to the high stage, so the team who selects you, can you create your own team, or do you all need to like get selected by the team? In League of Legends, like particularly?
Yeah, both, I would say. So on Challengermode, you have a team finder that you can use to either take 2 or 3 of your friends and find another 2 or 3 people, for example. Or you can, as a solo player, sign up and ask to join a team. Or you can, as you said, also join an established team. But the point is that we want new teams to actually form and to find their place in the leagues, and to have an incentive to keep playing season after season. Because for a lot of amateur players, they tend to just jump around between one team to another team and not playing more than just a few weeks or months together, because it's so hard for them to actually stick together in the long term.
Can I get another question? Like, I was trying the Challenger mode. I was trying like to invite my best friend in League of Legends to play with me, but Challenger mode didn't support like Emirates country. So are you planning to like open Challenger mode to the world or just Europe?
Yeah, right. What country did you say that was?
Emirates, like Dubai.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, we're launching in the Middle East next year.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we've restricted the service to Europe so far, but we're rolling it out in other countries and in the US next year. You're welcome.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. Currently, you are providing as a platform service for competition, organizing the competitions. Do you have intentions about giving additional services? I mean, education of the players, analytical tools. Just tell me about your future plans, if you have so.
Yeah. So maybe 1 or 2 years ago, we realized that with all of the competitions that we're doing and the player profiles that we're collecting and team profiles, there's so much more that we would want to do with that. Like you said, providing analytical tools, coaching, and try to, because we have coaches on the platform, we have team managers on the platform, right? So can we sort of give them better tools to do that? And so the goal is to provide that functionality. I think what we will be doing is we will be partnering up with other companies that are already building these tools, AI coaches, like marketplaces for coaches who are looking for players, team management tools and things like that, because fundamentally there are so many things that we could build, but we need to focus on what we do best, which is building competitive infrastructure. And then instead we're partnering up with the third-party apps that can integrate into Challenger mode as like an added service.